The Battle of Amiens is notorious for its strong and morale-crushing advance by the Allies, especially Australian, Canadian and British troops, also showcasing all aspects of modernised land warfare. The advance at Amiens was to push the Germans in an effort to flatten the curve that was the Saint-Mihiel salient, which would see combat in the September Battle of the Saint-Mihiel salient, and to free Amiens railway lines from fire. The advance was the beginning of the Allies' 100 Days Offensive, which was in response to the earlier German Spring Offensive beginning in March of the same year. The 100 Days Offensive would lead to the submission of the Germans in November 1918. The battle took place in Picardy, France, and was the third in a series of battles to take place in the relative area. Therefore, it was also called the Third Battle of Picardy, those being the First Battle of Picardy in 1914 and Operation Michael, part of the German Spring Offensive, or the Second Battle of Picardy in early 1918. Prior to the August 8 advance at Amiens, the German Marne-Reims operation, beginning in July, was met with a successful Allied counter-offensive, securing Allied victory at the Second Battle of the Marne, and subsequently Foch's promotion to Marshal of France. Fast pace and irregular tactics, including firing artillery only at the moment that the infantry charged, and surprise rather than dense waves of troops, were successfully used by the Australians at the Battle of Hamel on the deeply dug-in Germans with a wide range of fire on July 4, and would be utilised again at Amiens. Similar to that of the Battle of Hamel, the 1918 advance at Amiens was a shift from static trench warfare to mobile warfare, which could speed the time frame of battles on the front from months to within days. Amiens was also one of the first battles in which a large number of tanks could be utilised. Approximately 580 were used in the whole battle. British Major C.E.D. Budworth devised the firing plan using advanced sound ranging technology to accurately hit and take out the German artillery, which would be fired simultaneously with the troops charging over the top. To maintain secrecy, the advance was titled as another raid rather than an operation. The Allied forces consisted of three main armies, being the British 4th Army, comprising the Australian Corps training with the 33rd US Division, British 3rd Corps, British Cavalry Corps, Canadian Corps, Reserves, and additional RAF air support. The French 1st Army, comprising the 31st Corps, 9th Corps, 10th Corps, 35th Corps, and the 2nd Cavalry Corps, and French 3rd Army, comprising the 15th Corps, 34th Corps, and air support. In their southern position for the first time in the entire war, the Australians had linked up all of their infantry divisions by May 30. Both the Australian and Canadian Corps, who were known for their aggressive and regular success over the past 2 years on the Western Front, would fight together for the first time in the war. The British 4th Army and its contingents comprised 1,386 field guns and howitzers and 684 heavy artillery guns, forming 27 medium artillery batteries and 13 heavy batteries and divisional infantry artillery. The Axis powers consisted of two defending armies, being the German 2nd Army comprising the 51st Corps, 54th Corps, 11th Corps and Luftstreitkräfte air support, and German 18th Army comprising the 1st Bavarian Corps, 3rd Corps, 9th Corps, 1st Reserve Corps, 26th Reserve Corps, 17th Reserve Corps, and another Luftstreitkräfte air support unit. The Germans had made territorial gains during the Spring Offensive, which was to end in mid-July. Although Americans arriving to the Western Front and British Home Army troops to Sinai increased Allied density on all fronts. The German commanders and generals did not expect Amiens to become a large-scale attacking point, but rather east of Reims or Flanders, where the Canadian Corps would successfully divert the Germans' attention to while attacking on the unexpected front, Amiens. The plans for the advance were finalised by Rawlinson and his company, including Butler, Monash, Sir Arthur Currie and Lieutenant General Charles Kavanagh on July 21st. The German Second Army under General Georg von der Marwitz formed a new front as they withdrew marginally east of Amiens. A German Stoßtruppen unit of the 27th Division attacked and penetrated little over 700 metres north of the Somme on August 6, 2 days prior to the Allied advance on Amiens, concerning the Allies as it called for change in the advance. Fortunately for the Allies, the Germans withdrew to their previous lines on the morning of August 7, requiring only small adjustments in the Allied plan. A brigade comprising 4 battalions in both the Australian and Canadian Corps were allocated 140 tanks each, including 24 to transport ammunition and supplies to the front. The British 3rd Corps received a battalion of Mark V tanks. The cavalry received 2 battalions of 48 medium Mark A Whippet tanks each. 2 Handley Page 0400 bombers were to fly over the German lines continuously to mask the sound of the approaching Allied tanks already emerging in the dense fog. Captain Gordon F. and Captain William P. from No. 207 Squadron RAF volunteered after the original pilots from No. 2 Squadron regarded the fog too dangerous to fly in. Both captains were given the Distinguished Flying Cross. The 4 infantry divisions of Canadian troops moved forward to Amiens without being detected by the Germans, reflecting well on the Canadian troops. 2 Canadian infantry battalions, a wireless communications unit and a casualty clearing station were dispatched to the front near Ypres as a distraction to convince the Germans that the Corps was advancing north towards Flanders. The Germans fell for the bluff and concentrated fire on the diversion, increasing the element of surprise for the true advance. At 4:20 a.m. on August 8, British 3rd Corps' 18th and 58th, supported by the US's 33rd Infantry Division of the Army National Guard, attacked north of the Somme. The Australian Corps' 2nd and 3rd Divisions attacked south of the Somme, positioned in the 4th Army's front, with the Canadian 1st, 2nd and 3rd Corps further south. General de Bernay's French 1st Army, being the southernmost unit, began its bombardment at the same time and launched its troops 45 minutes later, supported by a battalion of 72 British Whippet tanks. 900 guns fired simultaneously with the troops' advance over the top, taking out 504 out of an initial 530 German heavy guns with the help of sound ranging technology. The ground shook as one gunner, J.R. Armitage of the AIF, commented. The Germans knew of the Allies' trench whereabouts, but did not expect the advance that they were met with, or the density of troops that morning. To the advantage of the Allies, a mist grew along the ground, further increasing the element of surprise. Because of the underestimated attack, the majority of the German lines took approximately 4 minutes to arm and take fire at the enemy. German command also denied using large gas bombardments as the position of the enemy was not well enough known to accurately fire. At 7:10 a.m, the Australians were the first to reach their objectives. After 3.7 kilometres at approximately 7:30 a.m, the first German positions were captured. A further 3.2 kilometres was the second objective, which the leading forces support units captured. At 8:20 a.m, the Australian 4th and 5th Divisions and the Canadian 4th Division, supporting the rear of the leaders, passed through the German-turned-Allied lines, which the leading units had done nearly an hour earlier. At this point in the attack, being the third phase, Mark V tanks carrying infantry were supposed to penetrate deeper into German lines, but this was done without the aid of the tanks. An Australian brigade and 2 Canadian cavalry divisions had continued past the Germans' rear. The Australians and Canadians in the centre of the offensive line had broken through 4.8 kilometres from the initial Allied line by 11 am. They advanced so quickly that they caught German officers and divisional staff eating breakfast. Fire from aircraft of the newly formed RAF and armoured vehicles prevented the withdrawing Germans from regrouping. In just over 3 hours, the battle had been secured by the Allies, and by the end of the first day, a 24-kilometre gap between German trenches had been achieved and secured south of the Somme. Less success was found north of the Somme, where terrain was rougher and the British Third Corps was held short of a 75-foot-high oxbow bend in the Somme near the village of Chipilly, named Chipilly Ridge. The US 33rd Division would later successfully capture Chipilly Ridge. The Canadians gained 13 kilometres, the Australians 11 kilometres, the French 8 kilometres, and the struggling British only 3.2 kilometres. The British Fourth Army took 13,000 prisoners and the French a further 3,000. The Germans sustained 30,000 losses on the first day. The combined British Fourth Army's forces had reached 8,000 casualties, not including armoured and air personnel. Commonwealth casualties reached approximately 20,000. French losses were similarly high, around 22,000. 29,144 prisoners and 338 guns were captured by the Allies, with 116 towns and villages liberated. Erich Ludendorff called August 8, 1918 Schwarzer Tag der Deutschen Heers, meaning the Black Day of the German Army, mainly referring to the crushed morale of the German soldiers, whom he previously referred to as depressed as hell by the Allied advance rather than the lost land. Shortly after the battle, esteemed General John Monash received his knightship from King George V, becoming Sir John Monash. Each sector of the front was widened on August 9, with the French in the south participating in what became the Battle of Montdidier. The French First Army surrounded and captured Montdidier on August 10, their main objective south of the Somme during the advance. After the capture, they started to move to Lassigny. The initial force of 500 tanks had been cut down to less than 10 battle-ready tanks. The Germans on Chipilly Ridge or Chipilly Spur held a wide field of machine gun and artillery fire, similar to that which pinned the Australians down at Hamel. 3 battalions of doughboys from the 33rd US Infantry Division were assigned with taken back Chipilly Ridge. The attack was said to have taken place at 17:30 hours, during which they were unable to be driven back by heavy German fire. The determined US soldiers relentlessly pressed on until they reached Grazier Wood. By the end of the next day, the American doughboys had obtained 700 German prisoners, 30 artillery pieces, 1 aircraft, and over 100 machine guns. At some point during the assault, all the officers of the platoon had been killed. A Serbian migrant from Kosovo, Corporal Jake Alex, took the lead of the platoon and rushed a German machine gun nest, killing 5 German soldiers and capturing 15 more. For his actions, Corporal Alex was the second soldier during the war to be awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. By August 10, the Germans had begun pulling out of the St. Mihiel salient, which they had acquired during Operation Michael 4 months earlier. The British managed to drive 19 kilometres into German territory by August 13. The advance ceased, not out of failure or completion, but rather was halted by Field Marshal Haig, who initiated a new offensive by Byng's Third Army between Ancre and Scarpe in the north. By August 27, the Allied troops had captured 50,000 German soldiers and 500 artillery and infantry guns. The Battle of Amiens had achieved the breakthrough of once impregnable lines, and the changed tempo of war, which would change modern warfare and mobilise troops. During the advance, a British Sopwith Camel fighter fired upon and shelled the 45-ton Krupp naval gun nicknamed the Amiens gun for its bombing of the town during the summer, forcing the Germans to evacuate but leaving the gun in good condition. Although abandoned due to British fire, the Australian 31st Battalion of the 5th Division were the first infantry to reach and capture the 280mm Amiens gun in the advance. The naval gun was driven back to British lines upon the train it was stationed on.